Jun Fan Gung Fu, this is how Jeet Kune Do was evolved. He says, I want to utilize all ways, not just stay within the Chinese method. However, I'm Chinese, and it has a Chinese name, but Jeet Kune Do as a whole was to absorb literally what is useful, reject what is useful, and add specifically what's your own.
On his objectives as a filmmaker, Bruce had stated during filming for an earlier role, I hope to make multi-level films here, the kind of movies where you can just watch the surface story if you like, or look deeper into it. Most of the Chinese movies to date have been very superficial and one-dimensional.
When I was training with Bruce Lee, and he wanted to make pictures, and at the time I was with him, I didn't fully understand, but he says, you know, I'm going to make movie pictures, and from these moving pictures, people are going to appreciate martial art. And when they start to appreciate martial art, they're going to appreciate the Chinese culture, because Chinese martial arts, they get to appreciate something in Chinese. If they can appreciate something that the Chinese have, then they will be able to appreciate what other Asians have. If they appreciate what other Asians have, then they're going to appreciate things from other cultures, whether it be from the Asian or from the Latin American countries, or if it's from the European countries, or if it's from the African countries, they're going to appreciate it. So it's, like I said, it serves as a universal vehicle for all of us to understand each other.
Whilst location scouting with James Coburn in Nepal for a project entitled The Silent Flute in 1968, Bruce had fallen in love with the intricate multi-level pagodas on display there and resolved to use them in a future project. When he begins development for the Game of Death 4 years later, Lee resurrects the idea once again, finally settling on the beautiful and dramatic Buddhist temple of Pok Ju So as the backdrop for the climactic fight scenes. From inception to realization, Bruce is involved in every aspect of production for the Game of Death, taking on the responsibility of producer, director, scriptwriter, action choreographer, and of course, leading actor. Filming in the height of the oppressive Hong Kong summer in stifling sound stages with no air conditioning, temperatures often reach the mid-90s during principal photography, with humidity levels running at an average of 90%. For his co-stars, Lee's drive for perfection can be both exhausting and at times frustrating, as take after take is required to capture the perfect shot. Lee, however, is hardest on himself. This rare sequence of outtakes shows him carry out no less than 10 takes for a nunchaku display sequence which will remain on screen for just under 4 seconds. Bruce suspends filming on the Game of Death in October of 1972 when he learns from producer Fred Weintraub that Warner Brothers are interested in co-producing his next film. This historic pronouncement heralds for the first time in the history of motion pictures a co-production between a Chinese and an American studio. The opportunity is timely. The film is Enter the Dragon. Working feverishly on the project from January to April 1973, Lee, in characteristic fashion, supervises every aspect of the production on Enter the Dragon. His handling of the fight choreography in particular is outstanding. Raw, full-blooded and bursting with energy, each sequence carries the trademark stamp of Bruce Lee quality. Upon viewing the completed rushes for the project in mid-April of 1973, Bruce tells his wife Linda that he's delighted with his work. Perhaps he dares to believe for the first time that international stardom finally beckons. Now, with Enter the Dragon waiting in the wings and producers from around the world flooding his production office with offers, Bruce turns his attention back to the Game of Death. It is the second week of July, and as it turns out, the last week of his life. Originally, having been conceived as a multi-level project of passion for the local Hong Kong audience, it's highly probable that Bruce would have begun to re-evaluate the whole Game of Death project in the light of his newfound circumstances. Feeling more confident than ever about his future, he begins to talk to ex-Bond star George Lazenby about a major role, as he undoubtedly feels it will give the film a greater level of commerciality. Although Lee's initial outline is sketchy, Lazenby is excited about the potential of the project.
The main thing was he wasn't going to kill me. He said, I'm not going to kill you, you're going to be a good guy, because he killed practically everybody in these movies. They turned out to be bad. But he thought that I'd be a great communication rod to the people that he didn't get through to because of his Chineseness. And he said, some people don't see that we're all the same. I was going to be Bruce's man that came in and saved him at the end and got him out of this, some kind of a house, pyramid thing with a top floor. And I came in there, and that was going to be my introduction. And I was like a mentor. And he was like super physical, but I was wiser. And it was that kind of thing. And I'd been mixed up in Chinese philosophy I'd been caught up in some war or something and fallen back into their philosophy for years in Korea or somewhere like that, I think, or some monastery. I forget the exact details, but he was going to introduce me that way, and then I was going to fade out again and then come into another movie with him later.
Now at last, Lee is on the verge of realizing his most enduring and heartfelt ambition: to communicate the beauty of his Chinese culture and the powerful dynamic of his unique martial arts philosophy to a truly worldwide audience through the medium of film. It is then, with a cruel sense of irony, that fate strikes its most tragic blow. Bruce Lee's death hits Hong Kong like a tornado. Stunned residents react in shock and disbelief. The local press is full of speculation and rumor. How could one so fit and healthy die so young? Thousands turn out for Lee's funeral, and the authorities have to lay on hundreds of extra police officers around the Kowloon funeral parlor to keep the crowds at bay. Above an ornate portrait of Bruce hangs a banner which reads, "A star sinks in a sea of art." All around are draped thousands of tributes, as close friends and colleagues come to pay their last respects. Members of the funeral party file past the coffin. Many are overcome with grief. Linda and the children gather round for a final look before leaving for the airport. Bruce's body will travel with them to Seattle on this, his final journey. In Hong Kong, public controversy continues to rage over the circumstances of Lee's death. On Friday, July 20th, 1973, the day of his passing, Bruce had arranged a restaurant appointment with George Lazenby, partner Raymond Chow, and Taiwanese actress Betty Ting Pei at Hong Kong's Hyatt Hotel to further discuss script ideas for the Game of Death. He never arrived.
The day he died, we had lunch together, and we were discussing the film more and more deeply, and we're having lunch, and we always had a little corner of a restaurant with a screen because people would bug you. If Bruce was there, they'd just sit, literally swarm and stand there and watch him while he ate. And so we had a screen, and we're sitting in the back of this restaurant. He said, "I got a headache." And I thought, Jesus, you know, I often get a headache, but it's usually from drinking. And he said, "I don't have a headache very often." But I said, "Well, look, skip tonight. We're going to have dinner that night." And I said, "Skip tonight, and when I get back, and my wife's going to have a baby, and when that's done," my wife was 8.5 months pregnant, I said, "I'll be right back, and we'll get on with this movie." I said, "But don't worry about tonight if you don't feel well." He said, "If I said I'm going to be there, I'll be there." And I was waiting with Raymond Chow that evening for Bruce, and He was about half an hour late or something.